Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another exciting discussion on all things well-being. This is Dr. Kimberly Quinn here at Champlain College with Dr. Scott Stevens for our new signature series. Okay, so before we get started, I want to say thank you for being with us. And is it okay if I call you Scott?
Yes, it is.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and Scott is here to speak with us today on this cool, sizzling hot topic of the metaverse. Can you explain, to people what that is?
Sure. And my explanation or definition might not be the final one, but it is the sort of coming together of the virtual worlds such as social media, online gaming platforms, your phone, the App Store, Amazon, and all those coming together in addition to your actual universe that we live in.
Okay, Scott. So just so I know, why is everybody like, what's all the buzz about? Why are people talking about it?
That's a good question, Kim, because it's everywhere. And I think it goes back to October of 2021 when Mark Zuckerberg made the big announcement that the company Facebook was changing its name to Meta. And then he went on to express his vision of the metaverse, led, I presume, by Facebook, Oculus, and his new company named after the metaverse. And the thing that I sort of found surprising about this was that the metaverse already exists. We are already knee deep in it. And whenever he was proposing we should go deeper, I thought, really, is it necessary to go deeper into the metaverse? We're already there with social media, gaming platforms, the App Store, Amazon, and we can interact with thousands of others while remaining, in our rooms. And that, of course, as we've seen over the last 2 years, has been exacerbated dramatically by the pandemic. And for better or worse, these metaverse interactions follow us when we leave our rooms and we start interacting with others face to face in traditional fashion. And specifically, I think the extent of the harmful effects of living online are now really starting to be understood. And I might even be late to that game of understanding it. And I'm certainly, more about the research in this area than I do.
Yeah, this is a topic that, both of us are very interested in, Scott. But tell me what you found out recently.
Well, and it's not necessarily that I specifically know, but I did watch the testimony on Facebook's internal research by Frances Haugen, the whistleblower. And that internal research, which was known to Facebook, revealed the damage that is caused to young users, especially teen girls, where depression and eating disorders were directly linked to and exacerbated by Instagram usage. And it makes me think about, how it is generation after generation. Parents have speculated that, something's wrong with this next generation and, with the Elvis and his pelvis. And I apologize to the users for even using that analogy because you'll only get it if you're over the age of 50 or 60. But it basically goes like every generation scares and confuses the next generation, the previous one, and then the older generation overreacts. But I think things are different now. I think all those worried parents do indeed have something to worry about. I'm worried about it. And again, I'm certainly aware that you probably have more knowledge on the research in this area. But from a technology or technology governance perspective, which is where I sit as the dean of the ITS division, there are some standard ideas on how to limit the damage. And these are all on the provider side of the equation. And one little caveat I'd like to make, I don't think that it's all bad. And one could easily argue that there is more good created by all these various technology advances than there are bad. But that does not or should not prevent us from trying to minimize the damage. So the three sort of tacts for approaching this problem from the producer side of the equation come with, and I'll categorize it as three types. There's the better angels, where we try to encourage social media companies to do better. There's Section 230, which protects these companies from liability for content published on these platforms. And then there's federal regulation. I don't have a whole lot of faith in any of these three, and I'll give you a quick summary of why that is.
So Scott and I were just talking kind of off the record here, I'm excited to actually have him talk to all of you about this. So, like, why don't you think these things are working?
I guess it's mostly about motivation, right? If we talk about, let me go with these one at a time, and I promise I'll land this plane eventually, and we'll get back to our conversation point and what we can do about it. But if we try to appeal to the better angels or the consciousness of these big companies, they make their bread and butter engaging more people for more minutes for more days. And the AI, I know in this podcast, AI might mean something else. So the artificial intelligence that distributes this content has a singular goal: more engagement for better or worse. And what we're finding out is that worse is pretty appealing to the public. It really draws attention and draws eyes. But from a financial perspective, anything that interferes with that model is going to cost the company more money, or it's going to reduce revenue. So it's hard to believe that they are going to voluntarily break away from that because of the better angels. The second prong is Section 230, and that's part of the 1996 Communications Decency Act. And really what this does is it protects internet providers and social media platforms from civil liabilities. If there was a way to eliminate this and open up these companies for lawsuits, there's no doubt that after a few multi-billion-dollar successful lawsuits, these companies would in fact spend the money and the time and even take some of the losses required to prevent the next one. But it will inevitably limit speech, and there's a good chance that these companies will be sued out of business right away. And I don't think the goal is to put them all out of business, or even worse yet, you put all of them out of business except one, and now you only have one super platform, and that's bad for different reasons. And the third one that I think stands even the least amount of chance is federal regulation. Free speech advocates are rightly concerned about who makes the rules and whose speech gets curtailed. All right, so there you have it. I personally have very little faith that any of these three interventions will work on the supply side. And there's no putting this social media metaverse genie back into the bottle. So this brings me to why I am here on this particular podcast today. I've spent very little time looking at this issue from the other side, from the user perspective. I've always looked at it from the producer, from the tech side, from the tech governance side. And I think recognizing that those are big challenges that may or may not be resolved in the next decade or so. How do we as users change the way that we interact with the metaverse in a way to get the most from it while minimizing the damage?
No, wow, I love this, Scott, because I think, in general, Scott and I were just talking about, well, we're both parents and both educators, and so we try to, for ourselves, and I know, like, mine are young adults now, separate the controllables from the non-controllables, right? Because we need to do that, be able to manage.
Right. The God grant me the serenity prayer, if I recall.
It's to accept the things that cannot change. What is it? Courage to change the things that can, and wisdom to know the difference.
You nailed it.
It's
That must have been hanging up on your kitchen wall, too.
Just a bunch of people at Alcoholics Anonymous in my family, so I got pretty used to it.
Mother, I think, knitted it, put it up.
But did it a little what do you call that? Cross stitch.
Yeah, it was a little cross stitch
thing
hung up in the kitchen.
But I think it totally pertains to this though, Scott, because we've
Sure.
got these cyber giants and little old us trying to teach kids and students. So, what? Tell me what you think.
Well, the advice that I get from a lot of folks is, you have to control how your children, and this is specifically as a parent, which is extra concerning. Um, but they'll say, I don't let my kids do that, or I wouldn't let my kids do that. I would limit their usage. I wouldn't let them use their phone. I'd send them to school without a phone. And the people that give that advice are of two flavors: extraordinary parents and people without kids.
I love it.
It's hard. You're not going to send your kid to school without a phone. You want to limit their time online, and you try. But I've seen it, and I've failed at it. And when I see my kids, and this was a while ago, I was dealing with in this more 2008 to 2018. But when they're in that space, in this particular case, they were online gaming platforms, they're in another world and they are in it. And just pulling them out of it is hard. Even when you come out of it, there's a 10, 20, 30-minute window before they're back. And they're engaging with all sorts of strange characters. And, the language is one thing. But in this case, it was almost a testosterone level that was uncharted. So I don't know how you pull them out of that. I don't know how you make that big leap to exiting the metaverse.
Okay, so minimizing the damage. Well, I mean, already I think we should just draw some attention, and I think you and I were just talking about this current generation of young adults that we're teaching, right? Is the most depressed and anxious generation of young adults the United States has ever seen, right? And we also know you were talking about teenagers, and we know that currently, last I checked, which was recently, I think it's an average of 9 hours per day, right? On the computer, not counting school or work, and largely social media, which brings us to what you're talking about with Facebook. Is they are, especially teenagers and young adults, are more in it than you and I, right? But they're comparing themselves to other body images, to who's in a relationship, who isn't, who was at the party and who wasn't, who's going to a good college and who isn't, and who blah 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 blah, 24/7, 24/7. So that comes back to what you were asking: is okay, there's the damage, and
Right.
now what?
Now what do we do? And it's not just the comparison, but sometimes the AI will funnel these young adults with body image issues into things like anorexia sites, or sites where they're actually given instructions on how to throw up after eating. Like, just really, it goes from just the standard body image issues that everyone, especially teen girls, might have at that age, but really exacerbated beyond just comparison for 8 to 9. What did you say? 9 hours?
9 hours per day
9 hours a day.
times 7.
Right. Well, if you look at the, what is it, Malcolm Gladwell, that says you need 10,000 hours of practice.
Expert. Yeah.
Right, for experts. So just think of that. We have millions of experts that could be in any other field, but that are spending it comparing themselves to others. So what a giant waste of time. What a loss of self-esteem for all those users. And what do we do about it? Like, when you're an educator, I'm an educator, how can we help turn this around?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the life minutes, because that's really what we're talking about.
Right.
Facebook is such a black hole for valuable in the moment life minutes.
Right. And I have to be careful about casting stones here, because I do my share of, it's not necessarily Facebook. It's TikTok. I find TikTok much less damaging, but I can still knock out 20 minutes a day. And the thing about TikTok, it gets to know me faster than I get to know me.
Oh yeah.
They're from their AI perspective, in 20 minutes I can say yes or no to 100 or so videos. So it really dials in. It knows me better than I do. It knows that I love golden retriever videos and
Me
shuffle
too.
dancing. Things I didn't even know I liked, and all of a sudden, it's feeding it to me. So it's a very addictive um, social media platform as well. It seems to be a little less harmless. I think I look, it's coming out of China. One thing they're better at doing in China is certainly um, monitoring what is being delivered. So if anything has any chance of offending somebody or coming in the wrong side, it disappears. It literally disappears. And a lot of good content disappears too, but it's mostly fun and golden retrievers and shuffle dancing from what I can tell.
Yeah, I'm thinking. We have a golden retriever. He's Giovanni, right? But I'm thinking too, like you and I sitting here, and for me, we both have YouTube channels, and I can go down that hole too. The difference is with you and I'm a fabulous 57. We have more of an ability to see around the corner from things.
Sure.
So and if that's tugging at us,
Right.
with more a little bit more wherewithal to get that and stop, right? A teenager, young child, teenager, young adult does not have that as much,
Oh,
which makes it more dangerous.
for sure. And not to give ourselves too much credit, but our brains are pretty well developed.
Since 25, so that was a while ago.
I'd like to think there's still some room for improvement, but it's not nearly as much as an adolescent when they're still trying to build those neurons and build up that self-image that gets them through their life. I mean, we're not going to be damaged as much.
Right. Okay, Scott. So we just realized, Scott. I realized like we kind of like dove into this wormhole. So we don't want to leave our listeners thinking that there isn't anything we can do. We're both parents of a combined 7 children, young adults.
Right.
I did the heavier lift on that one with 5, but and they're all young adults. And the thing is, we're talking about what can we do, and there are definitely things we can do. And the first thing I would say is we can't do what we don't know in general, right? If we're just got the blinders on.
Yeah.
So awareness, realizing that we are now a media saturated society, and that teens and young adults, little kids, teens, young adults, have this pressure to stay connected 24/7. They're comparing themselves to each other all day, every day, basically,
Right.
and it's bringing them down with huge, huge rates of anxiety and depression like we've never seen before. So awareness, having talks with them, at where they're able to, like you wouldn't talk to a 12-year-old like a 23-year-old, right?
Certainly, right. I think at some point you can still have some control up to a certain age where you can, just not allow them to do things. But as they get older and that prohibitive style no longer works, having those conversations of, this is new to our species, and it can be very dangerous, and you have to make these decisions for your own mental well-being to get off the social media, get out of the metaverse, and if that entails going outside, meeting with your friends, whatever we can do as educators, as parents, hell, as friends, to get people. As I don't know if you saw it, it was an advertisement by Salesforce, and I saw it on the opening ceremonies of the Olympics. And I was moved by enough, but that I actually rewound it, and then I saw it played again at the Super Bowl, so more people saw it. And it wasn't really for Salesforce; it was more of a public service announcement by Salesforce, starring none other than Matthew McConaughey. And it was a great commercial, and it talks a lot about what we're talking about here. It took a little jab at the billionaire space race, but then it also took a jab at the metaverse, and Matthew McConaughey in that Southern drawl talked about reconnecting with each other. And I think that's what we need to do more of. And I'd like to thank the good people at Salesforce for bringing that message to the Super Bowl.
I did see that, Scott. Actually, I think you sent it to me, and it was very good. And so saying like the awareness and having a conversation, and I will say one of our 5 young adults knows, she's software, she knows when she spends too much time on her phone, her anxiety levels go up.
Right.
So she's in that self-aware place, which is what we want. We're not doing that rigid, no. She's, in her 20s, right? So, and then the nature thing too is just, I can't say enough about the nature thing, because with that is also encouraging, with whatever ages they are, to be in the moment, because the mindfulness thing in nature just is like an immediate be in the moment
Right,
kind of
right.
thing, because we need face to face, right, Scott? We need to kind of inject that back into our lives, because that we're wired for taking in facial cues.
Right. And we need it, and it helps develop who we are. But it's so easy to say, I'd rather not go over to so and so's house. I'd rather not.
Oh, it's so much
go
easier
to-
now.
I mean,
Right?
especially as I get older, not going to a
Oh.
party is more fun than going to a
Yep.
party, right?
Yeah,
So,
and with the pandemic, right, we've seen it with college students.
Right.
It's got become conditioned, for lack of a better
right,
word.
right.
And we are creatures of habit, and it's difficult to get out of that. But really, we need to tough love ourselves a little bit,
Right, right.
and certainly we can, to a degree, with teenagers and young adults. I know that, for example, we're fortunate we live in the country, but when we go for a quick snowshoe for half an hour, Scott, they'll
Right.
admit it. Thanks, Mom. I'm glad you've kind of, not it's like forced, but strongly encouraged.
Right, right.
Come on, come with me, Giovanni the golden retriever. Come on. They're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I'm so glad I did that.
Right, right. Well, sometimes you do it, and you're like, well, my kid couldn't look any more miserable. But you got to get through that too,
Right.
because
Right.
in the end, it's the disconnecting virtually and connecting in reality,
And the graphics are better.
and the graphics are
You know
better.
what I mean? But it's just that it's the thing is that, and I had them when they were younger, not always liking it, but then afterwards saying it was good, because it gave them a break from the break
Right.
from their phone. They would actually admit that. My students here at Champlain have actually said that at the end of Minecraft. So not allowed, it's all off and under the chair.
Right, right.
And slowly they start to forget. A few of them left their phones there after, like, towards the end of it. They just got
Yeah.
better with it, and they realize when they unplug the drug for longer, they actually start to feel better.
So I think we were heading sort of down a hole, right?
And
The
now
two
we're
of
better.
us.
We're back.
Right, right. We're like, oh, we really dug ourselves into this one. But I think recognizing the magnitude of the problem, and that it takes awareness and diligence, and making decisions that aren't the easiest ones, are really the best way to combat this, because it's not going away.
No, and just pay attention to how you feel.
Yeah.
Right? This tells us a lot. Excellent. Wow, this has been such just an amazing conversation, Scott. I'm going to guess our viewers are going to think so as well, because it's so timely, regardless of your age. You know what I mean? Okay, so I'm just so thrilled that we're able to have you today to talk about this.
Well, thanks for having me, Ken.
Oh yeah, totally. So, all right then, we're gonna wind up. This is Kimberly Quinn and
Scott Stevens.
signing off from the beautiful Champlain College campus in Burlington, Vermont. Have a mindful day.